Hey guys, what is going on? My name is Fraser. As some of you may or may not know, I am one half of Evolving Alpha, vegan nutritionist, former butcher, now vegan. I wanted to do a quick live stream for you guys this morning on a couple of common questions that I saw come through. So first off, let me know where you're coming in from. Good morning, you guys. Yanni, Philippe, what's up? Hey, how you doing? We were meant to travel this morning back to Louisiana, but the weather's really bad. So we are kind of in this position where we may end up staying where we are for another day. So I figured, why not do a live stream for you guys on these questions that you see here. Give me 1 second. So it's basically on how many meals a day is the ideal amount of meals a day to burn body fat? Because that's a common question. You know, people are like, how many times should I be eating a day, right? And the other one is around, I'm struggling to build muscle as a vegan, or just, you know, in general. Why can't I seem to build any muscle? So give me 1 second and I'm gonna share this. There we go. Cool. So, guys, let's dive into this. There we go. I'm just going to share this, make sure the sound is on. I always go through a little bit of a quick check because I want to make sure that when I do these things that the sound is good. Here we go. Good. Cool. Perfect. Hey, Evan, what's up? So, guys, a couple of people asked questions, common questions, right? How many meals a day and what foods should I eat for fat loss? And the cool thing about this question is that you can really, like, the examples and the things I'm going to share with you this morning is really, it pertains to muscle building. It translates over to optimal health. These models, these ideas really kind of cover all of those things. And so and it's cool because what I'm going to share with you is something a lot of you guys probably already know about me to some extent, that there's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all model for everyone. I mean, there's not. And you know, some people will say you need to, you know, a common thing I see is like eat 7 times a day to stoke the metabolism. Now, obviously, like, some people like to eat that many times a day because they like smaller meals and they like to eat often, so they don't have a lot of like food going through their digestion at one point in time. So it can help with bloating. It just can help with hunger control. But in terms of like elevating metabolism, that's just, it's not going to translate over to substantial long-term fat loss. The fundamental thing I'm going to tell you is that whether you eat one huge meal a day, let's say your calorie intake is 2,000 calories a day. Now, whether you eat one huge plant-based meal a day or 10 meals at 200 calories each, ultimately, you're going to really have the same body composition, generally speaking. So the meal frequency is not as important as you think in terms of fat loss. Now, in terms of how you feel, in terms of digestion, in terms of fitting in with a lifestyle that works for you, yes, those things will come into play. So and those things are more important because that's really what's going to dictate your long-term ability to stick to something. Now, let's give you an example. There are people out there who love intermittent fasting, right? And they're like, I fast for 20 hours a day. I eat 2 meals. I love it. I lost a bunch of body fat. It was great. The fundamental reason why they lost a bunch of body fat is because they're in a calorie deficit. That's the only reason. It's not because, like, there are things to do with intermittent fasting that can improve digestion and hormone function and all these other things. I myself fast every day to some extent. I only eat 2 or 3 meals a day, but I'm not going to say that it's like the only solution for fat loss. You can still gain body fat eating 1 meal a day, fasting for 22 hours a day, if you eat too much food in that meal. So the cool thing about this is that there's not some rigid sort of model that you have to follow to achieve fat loss. What I would say to you is base it around your lifestyle. What time of day do you train? How busy are you? When do you feel best? I'll give you, and I'll refer it back to examples for myself so you can kind of understand like my thinking behind what I do, for example, right? So I'll give you an example. I'm not training today, but I probably won't eat till 12 o'clock, lunchtime. I'll drink water through the morning and stuff, and then I'll have a lunch meal, and then I might have a snack at like 3 p.m., and then I'll have a dinner meal at say 6, and then I might have one more snack at 7. That's generally speaking what I do. Now the reason why I do that, and I do that model where whether I'm trying to lose body fat or if I was trying to build muscle or gain weight, which I'm not anymore, but I would use that same model regardless. And the reason for that is because I feel better psychologically, I feel better physiologically when I'm fasting through the morning. I have more mental focus, I have more mental energy and awareness, and kind of like my ability to concentrate is elevated when I'm not eating. And another thing is like I don't want to allocate time to be eating all day every 2 hours. That's just not me. That I'm not about like spending that much time in the day like eating. There's so many other things that I want to be doing in my life other than eating. That I prefer to eat less. Training fasted, yeah. And so like with me, I'll train in a fasted state in the morning as well. I use branched chain amino acids while I train, so BCAAs. Now some people will say that isn't like a true fast, but to me I don't really care, because like I don't even like fall into the label of like what's a true fast and what's not. I just do what resonates with me. How do you have energy to lift fasted? The only thing that you need to really, there's two things in terms of training fasted. And so if, let's say you wanted to fast, like you wanted to have less meals in the day, right? Like you were like, okay, so I get it, Fraser, like, you know, I can eat 10 meals or I can eat 1. I like eating less meals. I feel like I might lose more body fat that way, because once I start eating, it's like the floodgate opens. Like I do have less control. I'll graze a little bit more. So knowing that about me and just the way I am, I'll make sure that I do a little bit of fasting. Now, yes, eat to live, not live to eat. Exactly. Like eating for a function of some degree of enjoyment, but also like a purpose in elevating your state. Now, yeah, and so like if you know you're a grazer, it's better to condense things down into a smaller window for some people, like for me, for example. But 2 things when it comes to training in a fasted state. 3 things, I should say. 1, give yourself a little bit of time. Give yourself a week, 2 weeks to adjust. If you've been eating breakfast every morning for your whole life and then all of a sudden you train in a fasted state, you may not feel the best straight away. That's just part of the deal. It's part of the game. The body has to normalize. The body sometimes will anticipate things, and you will have to go through a period where mentally you might feel a bit worse. Part of it could be a placebo. You're thinking, oh my God, like I'm going to have so much less energy because I'm not eating. And so you kind of act into that thought pattern. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to make sleep. Like if you get a really, really good sleep, or you work on your sleep hygiene and your sleep quality, there's no pre-workout in the world that is going to replace the amount of energy you can create from a good sleep. Like that, I think, is the fundamental thing on how you perform really well when you're in a fasted state. If you're in a calorie deficit as well, sleep would be the pivotal thing. And obviously there's ways to improve that. And the last thing is backloading your calories. So as long as you're consuming enough total calories through the day for your particular goal, your body's going to store a lot of that energy. It's not like at 12 o'clock midnight, you know, the clock strikes midnight and you lose all that stored energy in your body, and the next day when you wake up you're in a fasted state and you have none. All the body fat you wear on your body, all the muscles you have stored energy in them. And so it translates over to that, it pulls that stored energy out of storage and uses it for fuel. So obviously, from that concept, you know that you do have the stored energy. It's more of a mental thing. Letting go of that, I won't have energy unless I eat. Like, I think there's this concept between like eating and energy that people kind of get confused about. So that's the main thing, right? What about caffeine? So like, I mean, I do a little bit of black coffee before I work out in the morning. Black coffee and water, but that's just it. Like I won't do coffee like after I train at lunchtime and all those other things. I do find a little bit of caffeine before my training can help. There'll be times where I won't even do that. Like if I sleep really well and I don't even want that jittery sensation at all, I won't even do that. So it's really a personal preference, and it's like kind of learning how your body reacts to different things. But I never use pre-workouts anymore. I haven't used pre-workouts for years. I just find they're like, I have no desire to use them. So if you guys have more questions about this stuff, keep posting them. I'm enjoying the interaction with you guys this morning. And another common thing that kind of ties into this, and I got an email from someone the other day, and they're like, I'm struggling to, enjoy that sleep before the baby comes. That's true, right? I'm struggling to build muscle as a vegan. What are the common problems? One of the biggest things I think people struggle with is that they want two things at once. They want to be shredded and lean and competition ready, but they want to be strong and big, right? Now, that's not really going to happen in the short term. So like if you're in a calorie deficit for fat loss and or you're dieting down for a competition and or you are just not consuming enough total calories, you're not going, your strength, unless there'll be outliers and there'll be people who, just have the willpower and they sleep really well and all these other things. But you will not gain a lot of strength, and in fact you will potentially lose a lot of strength. Not a lot of strength, but you will lose some strength as you stay in a calorie deficit for a prolonged period of time, especially if you're an advanced lifter. If you're a beginner, you can probably gain strength because it's those newbie gains. But that's probably the most common thing, is that, I'll give you an example. Like I've got a client I'm working with right now, Karen. Now, she was like, I don't feel like I'm getting any stronger. And it's like, Karen, you have to realize that you're dieting down for a challenge. You're in a calorie deficit. You're not going to get stronger in a calorie deficit over a 12-week period. It's just not going to happen. You have to periodize your training and your nutrition so it complements one specific goal first. You can achieve a degree of both. Like some people will get a bit stronger and they'll get a bit leaner. Usually that's total beginners who are just coming in untrained, or someone who's coming off an injury and they haven't trained for a while. Those are the people who will hyper respond. If you're an intermediate or you're an advanced person, and I would say a lot of people fall under the sort of intermediate-ish area. There are a lot of people who fall under the beginner area too. But you need to be eating enough total calories to fuel weight gain, to fuel strength gain. Typically, that's what I notice. It's not like the only thing that matters, but generally speaking, it does come into play. So those are the main two things I want to put forward to you today. So like basically, if you're struggling to build muscle or strength as a vegan, you need to get off the bandwagon of wanting to be shredded or super lean all the time. That's the first thing. It's not to say that you're going to go to 50% body fat or you're going to put on 50 pounds. That's not what I'm saying at all. You can still maintain a relatively lean look, but you just can't have that idea in your head that you want to be this Instagram model that's stage ready while you're trying to get stronger and grow muscle. I've had people come to me and they're like, I've struggled to build muscle, but they're on when I run their calorie estimations and cross-reference it with my own sort of intuition, they're in a calorie deficit or they're right around maintenance and they're a more advanced lifter. You're not going to gain muscle like that because you have this kind of connection to wanting to stay super lean all the time. Taper your calories up a little bit over time. It's not to say that you dump a whole pile of calories into your diet and you just kind of blow up. What I'm saying is taper it up over time too. So if you've been doing 1 cup of rice for one of your meals, do to 1.5 cups or 1.25 cups, for example. It could be small little incremental increases, you know, but main things will be sleep quality. Raul, hey, Fraser made my first tempeh in the air fryer and it was awesome. Nice, that is cool. Air fryers are the shit, right? So just remember, guys, like when it comes to building muscle, patience. Because it takes way longer to build muscle than it does to burn body fat. That's why you see a lot of like fat loss programs around, and there's not as many muscle builders because people don't have the patience. They can do a fat loss program for 8 weeks, but to truly build muscle over 12, 16, 32 weeks, most people want it tomorrow. They just don't have the patience. So they're like, I've been training for 2 weeks, and I'm not seeing any changes. It's like, bro, I've been training for 14 goddamn years. I probably haven't really seen changes. You know what I mean? Like, you have to understand the context. That's really important. But also understand that you can't be in this hardcore fat loss zone as well as massive strength gains and size gains. It ain't happening. You can toggle. What I do is kind of like sometimes in the past I've toggled where I'll do like a 2 or 3 month block where I like focus on slight calorie surplus and strength. And I creep my weight up, and then I'll toggle back down for 2 or 3 months. And I find that sort of micro toggling, for me personally, kept me sane to some extent. And it was manageable. Yeah, after 2 weeks, like I'm not seeing any changes. Yeah, and so Jess, for you, in that instance, taper up slow. You know, taper up slow. Like, when I say taper up slow, I mean add in calories slowly. You know, you don't have to make a 500 calorie or 1,000 calorie jump in a week. It could be 200 calories a day. Just a small taper. And if you put those calories into your post-workout meal, I feel like that's going to push as much nutrient density into that recovery process as possible. So be okay with doing it slow. Because one thing I have noticed, even with myself, is as I've got older, my ability to store body fat, and everyone knows this, as you get older, you do have to be more diligent. The way I used to eat when I was in my teens and 20s, if I did that now, I'd be like a full-blown diabetic, obese train wreck of a person. But I was not healthy back then. Like, internally I wasn't healthy, and here I wasn't healthy, but on the outside, I wasn't like overweight because my job as a former butcher was so physically active. I was burning the calories, but yeah, and you do have to be more diligent as you get older. That's all. Like for me now, even at 33, I do have to make sure that I'm a little bit more intentional about my consumption of foods. And one of the cool things, a lot of people kind of like shine this negative light on calorie restriction, like oh, you're not eating enough food, you need to eat more food. One of the interesting things that's been shown in research is caloric restriction to some extent has been shown to increase lifespan. Basically what it means is that if you eat more food all the time, your body is doing more metabolic work to process that food. It's like if you're driving your vehicle, right? If you're driving your vehicle from one side of the United States to the other, that's a lot of work on the engine. It's creating a lot of byproducts, a lot of heat, a lot of friction, a lot of like wearing down of parts. Now, if you properly lubricate the engine and you drive a little bit slower and you take more breaks along the way, now would that help in terms of engine preservation? Maybe. So what I'm trying to say is that don't just think that, I have to eat less is a bad thing. Often, if you eat more, your body's basically doing more. It's burning more energy, it's using more energy, it's consuming more. Therefore, the byproducts, the free radicals, those processes are elevated too. And so sometimes consuming a bit less can be a good thing in terms of longevity, in terms of like immune function. So Katie says, I'm marathon training and losing weight. I'm trying to gain upper body strength and also just starting to learn to do push-ups. Don't make fun of me. But I can't do that. Let me see. Let's expand that comment. But can I do that? Gain strength enough to actually do them in a calorie deficit? It depends how much of a beginner you are. If you are what you would consider relatively beginner, or intermediate, and you haven't really done push-ups before, then yes, you will be able to. But if you're someone who's like super advanced and you've done tons of like chest work and shoulder work in the past, then obviously I'm assuming you're a beginner based on the push-up thing. So yeah, I think if you start doing them more, you should be, even in some degree of calorie deficit, be able to eventually achieve that. That would be my intuition. Yeah, so that would be my intuition. There's a fine line in terms of endurance work cross-referenced with strength work. Like, I've worked with people who have had these goals. So like, say for example, like I did a custom vegan program for a guy, a high-performing guy the other day who is training for an Ironman event, but he wants to improve his body composition as well. And obviously training for an Ironman event, it's going to improve your body composition anyway if you're already kind of untrained. But what we had to do was make sure that the loading of the training was like balanced. It wasn't like too much in one direction. Or say for example, it wasn't like he's doing like max effort squats and deadlifts and stuff alongside his Ironman work. That would just be way too much. Like, his body would break down big time. And obviously working on sleep and nutrition to some extent. Facebook ain't delayed with the comments, that's for sure. Yeah. So you've got to remember that you can, as a beginner, gain some strength and muscle growth if you're in some degree of calorie deficit a little bit. Like, you can't be in a huge deficit and gain, but you can at the start. Your body, it's a very interesting concept, like body recomposition. And I think that it does happen early on as an untrained beginner or someone who's come off an injury. So those typically tend to be the two categories of people it falls into. Do you guys have any other questions? It could be anything related to plant-based nutrition, fat loss, muscle building, any of those things. So the take-home points basically are meal timing. It doesn't really matter in terms, generally speaking, it doesn't really matter, but what will come into play and what will matter is, does it fit your lifestyle? Is it practical for you? What's happening with your digestion when you do it? What's happening with your hunger when you do it? So those things will dictate your meal frequency, but your total calorie intake for you will be what really dictates your body composition. So like I was saying, you could fast for 22 hours a day. Yeah, Mo. You could fast for 22 hours a day, eat one meal, but if that one meal was 10,000 calories and you were burning 5,000 doing some Ironman training, you would still gain weight. Equally, you could eat 10 meals a day, and if they're super small meals, you could still lose weight, even at that much. Do I take any supplements? I mean, I'll take like a vegan multivitamin sometimes, a B12 spray. And I mean, I'll take other random stuff here and there, like a serving of like clean green protein after my workout. And then sometimes, I'll use creatine if I have it. It's not like, I'm not like really rigid and strict. Oh. Did you have a question, Mo? Let me see. Maybe I'm confused. If not, that's cool. But the main thing I would say, definitely in terms of like just optimal body composition, is going to be like predominantly whole foods, plant-based. When I say predominantly, I mean like, you want the majority of your calories coming from clean, whole food, plant food sources. As the less processed stuff, the better. You want your training to be in alignment with, also about macro ratios. You want your training to be in alignment with your goal. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes people want a certain goal, but they're training in conflict with that, and they don't even necessarily realize it. So the training, you do want it to be in alignment with the goal in terms of like progressive overload, which is another thing entirely. Like, Google search progressive overload and weight training and you'll see. And the last thing is, I would say, sleep. Those are the main pillars, because I find that when sleep is in alignment, cravings go down, your ability to exert more willpower around food goes up. Your strength goes up in the gym. So that's the epicenter in a lot of ways. And about macro ratios, yeah, like that's the same thing. Like with meal timing, I think you can achieve the goal via multiple macro splits as well. You know, like you won't hear a lot of coaches or people say that. You know, a lot of people will say you need to hit this one thing or this particular split. I don't agree with that at all. I've seen that firsthand with clients we've trained. Like I know that it's not just me. Like it's not just me throwing like a inexperienced opinion out there. I've literally done it, and I've literally replicated that multiple times in our clients. So you can achieve the goal via various macro splits and various meal timings, which is a good thing because what it does is it allows for freedom. You don't have to fit some rigid little paradigm to make it work for you. What did Lauren's macro split look like pre-pregnancy? I know she likes to eat a little more fat. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to give you an accurate macro split because I don't think she's ever really tracked specifically. But if I had to, it would probably be like 20 to 25% protein. And I would say the other remaining percent from the total of that 20 to 25 would be like an even split between carbs and fats, or maybe slightly higher in the fats, which is still quite high in fats. Like if you think about it, like a lot of people really keep their fats low. Like that could be like 30% fat. You know, it could be a little bit higher. It's hard to say because she's never really tracked. I just kind of watch what she's doing. But she definitely adds in like more avocado, more nuts, nut butters, hummus, things like that to her meals. And she doesn't do as much sort of rice and potatoes and starches like I do. So yeah, and she still could get lean doing that too. So that's a cool thing, guys, is that you got to remember, like, meal frequency is more of a personal thing. Like what I would put forward to you, like the take-home points from this today is when you're considering how many times a day do you want to eat, how much time do you want to put forward to eating? You know, like when do you feel best? Like mentally, when do you feel most creative and sharp? For me, I feel really good mentally when I'm not eating. When in the morning, like right now, I feel my best. So I choose to not eat. I want to maintain that state for as long as I can. So that's why I structure my meal timing the way I do. And everyone's going to be different. It depends on when you train. It depends on your routine. Are you a night shift worker? Are you working long hours? Do you have access to a kitchen through the day? Do you not? Are you traveling a lot for your work? Like all these things, these are the questions you want to be asking yourself. Like you don't want to fit your life into your diet. You want to fit your dietary patterns into your life, right? And the other thing, obviously, with muscle building and struggling to build muscle when it comes to being on a vegan diet is most people just want to be too lean for too long. They want both. They want to have both. And you can have a degree of both, but it takes a foundation to get there first. You have to kind of be strategic. Like you're not going to be hitting strength gain personal records and building tons of muscle while you're in a calorie deficit. But you can kind of do a little bit of both if you're a beginner, for example, or you're coming off an injury and you haven't trained for a while. Those are another thing. So the take-home points here, guys, and I hope you kind of get a feel of this, is that there's many different ways to achieve your result. But what I would say is you want to base the way that you train and eat around the type of lifestyle that you want to live that's going to bring you the most happiness, and shape your meal frequency, the portions you eat, the way you train around that. That's the main thing. Anyway, guys, I would love to hear what your take-home message was from this. So post it in the comments. What was the take-home message? What was the thing that you got? And maybe let me know, like, how many meals do you eat a day? And explain, like, what's your thinking behind that? Is it just because you've always done it that way? Do you feel best that way? It seems that most people believe you can't get lean while vegan, as I'm encountering. Yeah. And that's, I think, coming from a traditional, like, so Mo says it seems that most people believe you can't get lean while being vegan. I would assume that comes from the mainstream fitness industry, right? Like the mainstream traditional like paleo-ish style industry probably has that belief. And I think that belief stems from carbohydrates. I think they think because they've had to restrict carbohydrates in the past to achieve a certain look and goal, therefore if they introduce carbohydrates in, you can't get as lean. I think that's probably where it stems from. That's the thinking. And again, it's just a paradigm. It's just they don't know what they don't know, right? I look at a lot of people who do like high fruit diets. Yeah, high fruit or high raw diets, or like, you know, especially high fruit. And they're lean as hell. Some of those people are super lean. So it tells me that, like, again, like total calorie intake really does play the role. And your body, now some people will say, well, you hold more water with that. And I think initially you might as an acute response, but your body's got an amazing way of finding homeostasis, which is balance, and it will normalize. Like I don't hold water consuming 50+% of my diet as carbohydrates. I'll hold water if I consume sodium. I'll hold water if I eat vegan donuts. But I won't hold water anymore if I'm consuming lots of whole food starches and fruits and stuff. So don't be scared of that stuff. I know that you're not, but I know anyone else listening might be. So those are the main things. Now, if anything resonated with you here, guys, or you were like, man, like this kind of felt over my head, or like it makes sense, but like where the hell do I begin? Message us to the page. Email me, or I posted out the link for our website. Go there, message us, reach out. You know, we're vegan nutritionists, strength coaches. I do all this stuff all the time. I help like a massive range of people from a top level of like performance all the way down to just people who just want to be healthier, period. And I love it because it's like one of the cool things is that there's so many different pathways that you can take. It's not like this one size fits all model. And I think a lot of people really fall into that trap of like, you have to just remove this, or you just have to just eat this thing. And it's like, no, like there's so many different pathways to take. And I'm saying this as someone who does this as a job, as someone who's in this industry. You know, I could write a book on, you know, the high fruit diet or this or that or the other. And then I would have to support that message by being overly biased towards that eating paradigm. Because if I'm not, I look like a hypocrite, right? And I think that's what happens to a lot of people. They write a book on something, they put out some information pushing a certain food paradigm within veganism, and then anything else outside that, they can't really acknowledge it, because then people will start saying, well, is your book valid? So they kind of paint themselves into a corner. And it's, you know, so Katie, Jesse's been helping me. I love you guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyway, guys, I'm going to jump off because I don't want to go on too long for this. For anyone who comes back and watch the replay, just go to the start. Most of the information was at the start. The last sort of 10 or 15 minutes was more of a Q&A. So go back and watch that. If you guys found this helpful, give it a share, you know, give it a heart. Get in the comments section. Start engaging, because it just pushes up reach. My whole thing is, if we can reach more people, it's going to get that information out there to them, and they're going to help. They're going to be able to help themselves, right? Anyway, guys, I appreciate all of you. We will probably be staying here today. We're in Alabama, heading across the Gulf Shores, but we probably won't be going today because the weather's a bit bad. But we will check in with all of you guys. If you have any other questions, post them in the comment section, and I can do more live streams on these stuff in the coming week. Anyway, guys, have a beautiful day, and I'll talk to you all very soon.